Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
It's Friday, June 20th. I'm Robert Patillo, sitting in for Roland Martin here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Here's what's coming up today. Streaming live on the Black Star Network. Explosive courtroom drama, shocking audio rocks the Diddy trial. I've not listened to 1 second of the Diddy trial, so I'll be learning this at the same time you are. Legal analyst Candace Kelley joins us to talk about the latest developments inside of the courtroom. Also, tensions are escalating between Israel and Iran. We're going to do a full breakdown on exactly how we got here and where we can go from here as Trump considers U.S. military action. We're going to be joined by national security expert Dr. Nola Haynes, who will explain why we should be concerned about these developments in the Middle East. Also, the USDA is cutting nearly $149 million from diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. We're joined by Congressman Jackson, my boss, who will be discussing what's happening next and his questioning of the Secretary of Agriculture. And also, the MAGA fools have lost their minds when it comes to Juneteenth. Roland literally recorded like a 15-minute segment. And so Roland has a few words for the less melanated people who want to disrespect the holiday. And we also remember the 2 lives lost on behalf halfway through the legendary half of the legendary R&B group Yarborough and Peoples. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Now, the case that has been captivating the nation is the trial of Sean Puff Daddy P. Diddy Combs. A New York jury in the Diddy trial reviewed text messages today submitted as evidence by prosecutors. In the messages, Cassie Ventura told Sean Combs on May 2nd, 2017, "I didn't deserve to be beaten by you. That's not love, that's possession." And as a result of that, we also saw more messages coming through that refers to a well-known videotape assault that occurred in 2016. Braden Paul, Combs' former personal assistant, also testified that he was there during various drug-fueled incidents with Combs during his employment. Legal analyst Candace Kelley joins us to talk about these recent developments. Attorney Kelley, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. Good to see you, Robert.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, as I said, I have not seen 1 second of this trial. Catch us up on what's going on.
Well, listen, the prosecution is coming to a close of its case. They're actually going to be resting next week. As you mentioned, there were 2 witnesses that took the stand today to really close this out. First, we had Brendan Paul. He took the stand today. He has full immunity, by the way. He is the former personal assistant of Sean Combs, was his personal assistant for about 18 months. He made it specifically clear, though, that he is not a drug mule. That's what we've been hearing a lot about Brendan Paul. Many people know his background. He graduated from Syracuse University. He's on the basketball team, obviously a very tall gentleman in court. But one of the things that he talked about was the fact that he was arrested for cocaine possession at the time that Sean Combs was caught in terms of his homes being invaded. He was actually on a private jet with KK. Many people know as Christina Coran. She was the chief of staff for Sean Combs. And he said that they were on their way to the Bahamas when he got busted for cocaine, as he put it. He also said a few other things. He said that his job was a lot of hours, maybe 80 hours a week, that he procured ketamine and ecstasy, Adderall for Sean Combs. But again, he emphasized that he was not a drug mule. And he also said that he did not witness criminal activity on these freak-offs, or what many people now know as King Nights. Also testifying, as you mentioned, was a Homeland Security agent. This was a man who took us through more texts, more financial records, hotel reports that were tied to Combs. He talked about large stacks of money that would be moved based on the text, asking for $10,000 or $3,500, or we need $600 right now at this very instant. And then there was a damage report from a hotel in London that he testified. And he testified about how the towels appeared to be soaked in baby oil. Now, a lot of people have a problem with this whole baby oil. Like, who cares is what a lot of people are asking me. If there's baby oil, if there's Astroglide, that's his personal preference. Well, one of the things that the prosecution is trying to do is say that every time that there is baby oil, that this signifies a forced freak-off. That freak-off, this is the connection that they want the jurors to make. So this is why they mention the baby oil so much. It's not because of his sexual preferences or what he does in the bedroom. The prosecution is saying, listen, every time you hear about a lot of baby oil, that means that was a freak-off. And they also want jurors to associate that freak-off to something being forced. Now, as a reminder to some people who may not be following the case like you, we've been seeing, actually in the gallery, I have not been seeing anything, but the jurors have been seeing pictures. But this week, they finally saw what in totality was about 20 minutes of moving video of these freak-offs. And, you could kind of see over the shoulders of Sean Combs and the attorneys that were involved what was on that. And then I will say that it was quite a showing looking at these freak-offs. Now, listen, these freak-offs could work for the prosecution and the defense. The prosecution wants to make the point that these were forced. The defense wants to show that, listen, she was enjoying herself and was enthusiastic on these recordings. So this is something that will be left up to the jury to decide. On defense, I just want to make sure that I point out that Brendan Paul said he was not at any freak-off, so that Sean Combs' attorneys wanted to make sure that that was known, that he didn't see any criminal activity. He couldn't have if there was any potential criminal activity because he was not at the freak-offs. They also insinuated that maybe these drugs made Sean Combs a slight more creative, and it wasn't because he was running some huge enterprise. And they also brought up the fact that, Brendan really learned from his experience, that he admired Sean Combs, and this was something that was a big deal. As I said, next week on Monday, the prosecution will rest. The defense has said that they will only take a couple of days and that they will be finished with all of their witnesses by Wednesday, a lot sooner, Robert, than a lot of us had expected.
Well, and on that point, I've done RICO cases in the past. We've seen high-profile RICO cases in recent years, whether it's the YSL trial in Georgia, the Trump RICO case. It's generally seems recently difficult to prove. Can you kind of, for the audience, tie together how exactly the evidence presented today in court ties to the kind of the macro point the prosecutors are trying to make? Because I've noticed a lot of the online discourse, people not understanding exactly what this has to do with proving the conspiracy or the charges that Diddy's accused of.
Yeah, and you make a very good point that a lot of people don't understand because there's a real disconnection. When we think about RICO, we have been trained by the media and movies to think about mafia. And people don't think about Sean Combs in that way. They don't think that he is the mob. But when we talk about RICO, we are talking about committing two predicate acts, one of them perhaps being arson or obstruction of justice, or perhaps bribery or extortion. If he has committed two of those acts over a period of 10 years, then that would lead the jury, if they follow the jury instructions as they should, to say, yes, this RICO charge should actually stick. So that's really the key there, is kind of thinking about it outside of Scarface and Goodfellas, and think of it in the way that it has been used, as you said, over the years. I mean, Adidas has found themselves in the middle of a RICO case. Of course, R. Kelly. Remember the college admissions school scandal? That was a RICO case that crossed state lines with about 54 defendants. So the RICO case is used a little bit more than people probably understand, but the way that we see it in larger than life is with the mob. Though I will say this, Robert, that there are many times during this trial sitting in the gallery where things that are alleged that Sean Combs has done are very mob-like. I mean, when we talk about extortion and Regina Ventura, who is Cassie's mother, saying he demanded $20,000 from me, and I went. I took out a second loan on my home, and I gave him that $20,000 because he said he would release the tapes. Or we heard from one of his workers of several years that he's known for a couple of decades, saying that she was forced into a building, abandoned, and set in the room with a large man who was chain smoking and drinking coffee all day. And for 5 days went through lie detector tests, and nobody knew where she was. And she was threatened that her body would be found in the East River. So a lot of these things are very much aligned with what we think about with the mafia. But we really have to think, will the jury think that this company, all these companies that Sean had, was it in the existence just to kind of carry out these acts? I will say that's a hard one for me to connect to. He had Sean John. He had, the liquor deals. He had his music company, of course. He has marketing company. He had Revolt TV. Did all of this exist just for the purposes of criminal activity? That's not one that ties up into a pretty bow, Robert.
And on that point, I think many people, this is part of what you do when you're trying to appeal to a jury, making sure that when you're presenting the case, that you're ensuring that you're not getting lost in the weeds. Do you think that maybe some of this extra information, some of the extra salacious information, runs the risk of distracting the jury from the point that you were making? Was this an interstate, international criminal enterprise, or are they just showing videos to try to embarrass Mr. Combs and eliciting testimony to make him look bad? You can't convict him of being a bad person. You have to convict him of the actual crimes alleged.
Right. And, I think that when they saw this video for the first time after we're in our 6th week now, they saw it last week for the first time, the moving video. They had seen pictures. I mean, some of them ripped their headphones off. It was just a lot. Is it distracting? I think that it's actually good for the defense in that we've heard it so much and we've seen, pictures of the Astroglide, just cases of it, a la Costco. And I think it really desensitizes jurors. So in terms of the defense, I think that it works for them and that they've seen about it so much and heard about it so much that it doesn't affect them so much. Though I will say, when that moving video was shown to them, there were quite a few disturbing looks. There were also quite a few very interested, vested looks in terms of what was going on that video. So I think it could go either side, but I don't think it's necessarily a distraction. I think that we've heard about it enough that it's like a horn on a car alarm that goes off. After a while, you can sleep while the horn's going off. You're kind of immune to it.
All right. Well, before we go, tell people what they need to look out for in the trial. As you said, the prosecution may be resting as soon as early next week. The defense may conclude their case in chief. What are people going to see over the next week?
Well, over the next week, we're going to see Monday, as you said, the prosecution will probably rest. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to hear from witnesses from the defense. Obviously, Sean Combs is not actually going to take the witness stand. I mean, we'd need a whole week and a half for that. So we know that since they said that they are only going to need 2 days, they probably have 3 to 4 witnesses. One of them will definitely be a forensic psychologist to talk about Sean Combs and all of his shortcomings, right? We heard about a forensic psychologist on the prosecution side and domestic violence and trauma bonding. Well, on his side, I'm sure that we're going to hear about him being a drug addict, a sex addict. Being bipolar has also been mentioned during this case, that Sean Combs is bipolar. We're going to hear all of that and potentially, Robert, some character witnesses. I'm not sure who these character witnesses would be to make a difference, but that's who the door is open to probably at this point.
All right. Well, thank you so much for keeping us updated. I know a lot of people are really keyed in on this and supportive for people to understand, if nothing else, how exactly these RICO cases work and understanding that you may be part of a criminal enterprise that you have no idea about. So be careful who you're associated with. Thank you so much for everybody. All right. We're going to go to the panel to talk about this with Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show out of Detroit, Matt Manning, civil rights attorney out of Corpus Christi, Texas, Dr. Zachary Kirk, educator and content creator out of Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to go to you, Attorney Manning, first. What do you think about the testimony, and do you think this actually pushes towards a RICO conviction or a conviction on the charges that actually exist, or is it just salacious detail to muddy his name?
Let me say first, it's a great pleasure to be on with you, Robert. You always do a fantastic job, and Candace as well, so I'm glad to see you both. I read the indictment while you were talking to Candace, and I haven't listened to any of the testimony, obviously not being there, but I'm struggling with how the government is going to make this as well. And let me give you an example. Roland has a bunch of people working for him, right? If they go out and they do something and something happens while they're out, if somebody's prosecuting, there's going to be a question of whether that's done under the aegis of the Roland Martin Unfiltered show or whether it's done with a group of people who happen to work for Roland Martin. That is the issue in this case. There are a number of people who work for Diddy, and the government has the burden solely on their shoulders to show that all of these activities, these salacious details, as you're saying, inure back to the Combs enterprise. And I think the idea that just because they work for the Combs enterprise, that creates RICO liability just doesn't track. I've never tried a RICO case. I've tried hundreds of cases, never particularly a RICO case. But the way I would attack this is precisely what my understanding Brian Steele is doing, which is, look, he may like to partake in drugs. He may like to do things sexually that are outside of the norm for you, but whether that correlates to a conspiracy under this business enterprise to further its purposes is a difficult thing unless you have very clear evidence that it's done for those purposes. And very quickly, before I turn it over to another panelist, I know the way the government tried to write this indictment was pretty wide-reaching and nebulous, you know, to increase his power, I think is some of the language that it used, to preserve his prestige. But the problem with that is you may have a reasonable doubt if one of the jurors believes that that's something that he's doing in an individual capacity as to Sean Combs, individual from the Combs enterprise. And that could be something that people who are employed for him are helping him do, but not necessarily under the umbrella of the Combs enterprise. And I think that's going to be the struggle. How do you say this is really the business or the association that is conspiring to do these things as opposed to people with whom he has a close relationship who are doing it at his behest, but maybe not necessarily in the conspiratorial way that is required for necessary proof under this indictment?
Absolutely. And Michael, I want to talk to you and kind of talk about the cultural impact of this Diddy trial, because, you know, as much as you may not want to, if you are going to write the history of hip hop, Sean Diddy Combs is in there for a big period. You know, if you want to play music at a cookout this summer, if you're at the Juneteenth barbecue, it's hard to skip over all the R. Kelly songs, skip over all of the songs involving P. Diddy. What do you think the cultural impact of this trial is going to be?
Well, you know, first of all, kudos to Candace for giving us this breakdown almost every day for the past 6 weeks. I don't know how she can stand this, but when we look at the cultural implications of this, one, even if Diddy is found not guilty, there's going to be, I don't think his image is really going to recover from this, because we saw the abuse in the video that was released when he beat Cassie, and he put out a video apologizing for it also. So that abuse is substantiated. Two, when we hear about the freak-offs and the prostitutes with sexual escorts, etc., things like this, it's one thing to, in hip-hop, let me put it like this. In hip-hop takes everything that's in American culture, like, to the extreme, right? But what we're finding out about these freak-offs in court, this is beyond the extreme, okay? So, and then when we talk about valuing Black women, valuing African-American women, listening to testimony from Cassie, things that we're finding out in this trial, even if he's found not guilty, I would be suspect to really any Black woman that wants to work with Diddy after this.
Absolutely. And Zachary, picking up on that point, I've been looking at a lot of the cultural conversations that we're seeing online, particularly with younger people, you know, Gen Z who didn't grow up with the music of Diddy or other things. And it seems that there's this divide that is taking place between Black men and Black women online when you're discussing this trial. If it seems if you have any questions about it, if you're a man talking about it, you automatically get accused of defending Diddy. And if you're not 100% believing, or if you have any questions about it, you get called misogynist and all the other things. What do you think has to happen for us to be able to have constructive conversations online when we're discussing something as horrible as the Diddy trial, but also trying to be objective in our communities?
We have to understand that the ideas represented by an individual are the ideas represented by the individual. I don't speak for all Black men. I don't speak for all Black gay men. I speak for myself, Dr. Zachary Kirk, the Zactivist. That's who I speak for. And Robert, when, I followed this case. This is kind of the content that I cover on social media. I focus on people, politics, and pop culture. And this has really held the pop culture, in a chokehold, especially among young people. And I think the divide is even bigger than just simply Black men and Black women, but it really is kind of an intergenerational split. And a lot of young people, Gen Z, young Black Gen Z members of the Black community really see this in a very negative light. One thing I realized, I was reflecting on this actually on yesterday when I sat down and read the 46-page, I'll call it a legal claim or complaint against Tyler Perry. The job of a really good prosecution is to create a really strong brief, a really good complaint that, everyone's going to see the court of public opinion and rush to judgment. And knowing that most people aren't going to read through it and think critically. That's kind of some of what we maybe saw with the Diddy complaint, what came out, the salaciousness of it. But again, as Attorney Manning, my panel mate said earlier, there is actually a level of nuance here as to what is the real wrongdoing and whether or not the RICO charge will be something that is going to be able to hold. And as I look through this case and I follow it very closely, I can't help but to agree that I think it could be that there is some trouble for the prosecution as this continues to roll out. Listening especially to our expert at the very beginning, I don't know if Brendan Paul's testimony helped or hurt the prosecution's case. I think it could have done a little bit of damage today, even though I haven't watched that piece yet. I'm going to check that out after we conclude. But it didn't make me feel very confident for hearing that, then knowing the other things that have happened throughout the days of this case.
I think it's an interesting conversation. Like you said, following this is very much a generational split and generational divide, and it's something that we have to keep up with because this is part of what the cultural conversation is, and we can't simply ignore it because it's not within your wheelhouse, because it does drive the conversation. All right, we're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be back after the break.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. A very different take on Juneteenth with the one and only Dr. Sunyata Ahmed. We'll explore the amazing foods, remedies, and rituals that are a part of our history and the Juneteenth holiday.
So it's our responsibility to return the healthier version to our folks instead of just the red liqueurs marketed to us, the red sodas and the other things. I mean, why does the Kool-Aid man have to sound like Louis Armstrong? He's like, oh yeah!
Yeah, all right. An enlightening and tasty hour of the Black Table, only on the Black Star Network.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, as most of you have been watching, Israel and Iran are in the midst of a conflict that may draw America in. And when I say Israel and Iran are in a conflict, that's the way Western media has reported it. What really happened was Israel launched a sneak attack against Iran in the middle of the night, and now Iran is trying to defend themselves. Now, if you listen to Western media, you would think that Iran had attacked Israel, when it's actually the other way around. So how is it that America might get pulled into this mess going on in that region? Well, the truth is, we're already in that mess, and we've been in that mess for the better part of 75 years. Iran was ruled by a dynasty from 1789 to about the 1920s. Then, mysteriously, during World War II, the British and the Russians decided to invade Iran, overthrowing the dynasty that ruled there, and then emplacing a democratically elected government. When that democratically elected government decided to nationalize the oil industry there, the UK and the US, through the CIA, overthrew the democratically elected government and installed the Shah of Iran and developed close diplomatic ties. If you're over 50, you remember the Shah of Iran coming to Washington, D.C. and visiting and all the pageantry around that. But guess what? During that same period of time, he was an awful and brutal tyrant, subjugating his own people, which led to the student revolution in the late 70s and then the Islamic revolution that took over thereafter of the Ayatollah Khomeini. This is 75 years of history we're condensing down into a couple of seconds. With that, we decided that they were then the enemies. The reason Iran still flies F-14s and F-4s and uses technology from the America in the 1970s was that's when we cut off relations with them, and we've been pushing to overthrow that regime and reinstall an American-friendly regime since that day and time. Fast forward to October 7th when the Hamas attacked Israel. That started Netanyahu on this casus belli to, in the name of security, launch a 2-year war, killing and committing what is the equivalent of a genocide in Palestine. He then used that same power to go after Hezbollah in Lebanon and in Syria. He then used that same power to go after the Houthis in Yemen. As a result, since we're the big brother in this situation, America this year has spent over $1 billion striking the Houthi rebels in support of this campaign that we're currently seeing. You take out the proxies first, and then that paves the way for Israel to have unfettered access to destruction of Iran. The issue is the Iran nuclear program, which is the current auspices under which we are preparing to go to war with Iran, is located between 300 and 500 feet underground, and the only bombs that have even the technical ability to hit it are GBU-57 bombs dropped by B-2 stealth bombers from the United States, which are stationed at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean right now. So unless America comes into this war, Israel can bomb Iran as much as they feel like it. They have no ability to actually stop their nuclear program from taking place. So a couple of nights ago, Senator Ted Cruz, who is a proponent of the invasion of Iran, went on Tucker Carlson's show, who is an opponent of the invasion of Iran, and they had a nice conversation. Let's throw it to the clip of Tucker Carlson interviewing Ted Cruz.
If Israel decides we're going to decapitate the government and try to foment an uprising against it, should the United States participate in that operation in any way?
Look, I have not called for killing the Ayatollah. And there is, nations in war generally refrain from attacking and killing heads of state. Now, the Ayatollah doesn't. He's trying to kill Trump. We talked about that.
But we shouldn't punish him for it.
Look, there has been a long-standing, nations in war have refrained from killing heads of state. I have not publicly called for killing the Ayatollah. What I've called for is doing whatever is necessary to stop him from getting nuclear weapons. In the first Trump term, what that meant was maximum pressure. So in the first Trump term, I spent a lot of time urging the president to withdraw from the disastrous Iranian nuclear deal that Obama had. President Trump agreed with me. He did that. And then I urged him to end the oil waivers and to sanction the hell out of the country. And it ended up crippling their economy. So Iran at the time was selling 2 million barrels of oil a day. 1 million barrels, I'm sorry, 1 million barrels of oil a day. When President Trump ended the oil waivers, it cut their sales to 300,000 barrels a day. At the end of the Trump term, the Iranian economy was in shambles. They had massive inflation. I think the regime was teetering. I think it might have fallen. I would use economic sanctions and I would use moral suasion to try to effectuate
if you
regime
topple,
change.
okay, so you topple the regime and by whatever means, what happens then? How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's, it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay,
actually,
I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe
we're
that...
carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
we are supporting
This is high
Israel.
stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay, we are not bombing them.
Oh, okay.
Israel is bombing them. And hey, why do you do the snide, oh, okay?
What do you mean? Because this is super high stakes stuff. This is a huge country that borders a lot of other important countries. A lot of the world's energy comes from there.
So
let me ask you,
don't want
another disaster. You don't want to be
Tucker,
reckless.
The Ayatollah refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan. Do you believe him when he says it's the great Satan? Do you think if the Ayatollah could murder both of us right now that he would? I do. I believe him.
Okay, I assume no good faith on the part of the Ayatollah.
No, not
and
good
if your
faith.
implication is like I'm pro-Ayatollah or something.
No, it's not good faith. It's that
just saying you're a lawmaker. You're a powerful person in Washington. This is the most powerful country in the world. If you're calling for toppling in government, it's incumbent on you to know something about the country and to think through the consequences of that. And you haven't, and you don't.
You know, for once, I feel bad for Ted Cruz, because Tucker Carlson, I've been on his show plenty of times. He's a nice guy, actually, in person. But let's throw up this map of the Middle East real quick, just so people can understand. So right there in the middle, that's Iran. The big thing in the middle, look to the left of that. That is Iraq. Remember that time we tried to invade Iraq, how well that went? See how much bigger Iran is than Iraq? Guess what? We'd have that much more of a problem if we decide to have a military intervention. Look on the other side of Iran. That's Afghanistan. Remember that time we tried to invade Afghanistan? Remember how well that went? Well, we're going to have all those problems plus some if we're trying to do a military intervention in Iran. Add into that, when Ted Cruz talks about regime change, toppling the regime, to the northwest corner of Iran, so top left of your screen, that area is Kurdistan. It is a semi-autonomous region of a Kurdish people that stretches between the Iranian, the Iraqi, and the Turkish borders. Look all the way down to the southeast corner where Iran intersects with Afghanistan and Pakistan. That area is called Balochistan. That is a semi-autonomous region which is spread out between Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. If you look at the border between Iran and Iraq, that is the Sawat al-Arab waterway, where they have been going to war for the past 40 years for water rights to that. Look all the way on the Afghan border. There's a river there. Iran and Afghanistan have been fighting for the last 5 years over water rights to that river. So if the regime falls, all those people immediately invade and declare independence. You have a civil war going on in Kurdistan. You have a civil war going on in Balochistan. You're invaded by Iraq. You're invaded by Afghanistan. To the top east corner, they have a semi-autonomous area by Turkmenistan that also becomes immediately independent. So to talk about this and what the ramifications will be of an actual invasion of Iran by Israel and the United States, we're joined by Dr. Nola Haynes, national security expert, theologian, and professor. Dr. Haynes, how are you doing?
I'm good. I am not a theologian. I respect theologians way too much. I do have a divinity degree, but I'm not a theologian.
I think all of the above are needed in this particular time. So can you talk a little bit about what the actual ramifications would be if we went to war, or if America got drawn into this war with Iran?
Well, I have some information this evening that suggests it's not a matter of if, that the 2-week pause is actually more about us, the U.S. actually moving back into the region in terms of strengthening up our air and naval defenses. That's the information that I'm hearing. So this supposed 2-week pause for Trump to think about the action, from what I understand this evening, the action is already decided upon, and that we will be involved.
And with that, President Trump, the idea that he's around why he said we're going to do a 2-week pause was because he said he wanted to have more time to negotiate with Iran. But he pulled out the JCPOA in 2018. What exactly is he trying to negotiate now that wasn't in the JCPOA that he already withdrew from?
Well, it's one of those, tricks that Trump does all the time. He creates the problem, and then he tries to pretend as if he's solving the problem that he created. Trump, absolutely created the problem, pulling out of JCPOA, better known as the Iran nuclear deal. And that was a mistake. And we're seeing a lot of those consequences today. We're seeing the consequences of a lot of bad foreign policy decision making. And at least in Trump 1, there were some adults in the room. There were some guardrails, but there aren't right now. And so while we are in real time seeing the consequences domestically, we see it every day of this election, things are starting to bear out geopolitically with the consequences of this election. And one thing that I want to lean into is, yes, there is a concern about, Iran enriching uranium beyond the 5% threshold, hanging around somewhere about 60%, because that means that you are very close to making a nuclear weapon. That part is a reality. However, what's going on behind the scenes and what needs to be elevated more, and I did hear you mention this, is this idea of regime change, but regime change in a very different way. The first thing I'll say is anytime you want to, there's some sort of regime change via violence, it doesn't work out. You mentioned Afghanistan, Vietnam, I could go on and on and on. It typically doesn't work out. Maybe about 2 months ago, Ben Rhodes wrote this really interesting piece about this concept called the spheres of influence, basically about not so much countries wanting to be the superpower, but regional powers amassing hegemonic control. And so in terms of regime change in the region, it seems as if Israel wants to be the top dog in the region, and it's going to do it by any means necessary. And I also want to point out to the audience that this isn't a new situation. Netanyahu has been talking about this particular thing regarding Iran and it's building its nuclear capabilities since the 90s. This plan, for all intents and purposes, has been in existence for at least a decade. But the guardrail that existed were typically the U.S. American presidents. That guardrail no longer exists. One of the reasons could be not just the fact that, Trump is inept, but secondly, we want to control the world's crude oil and gas reserves. And I need to put this into context. You showed that map, but why is it always so much drama in the Middle East? There are historical reasons, but when you have oil come into the mix, the U.S. is said to want to control those reserves. And so Iran is responsible for about 1/5 of the global consumption of crude oil and gas. The one lever that Iran is threatening to pull is to close or to disrupt transportation through the Strait of Hormuz. And why is that important? About 19 million barrels a day goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is right between Iran and Oman. And so Iran is threatening to disrupt that flow of oil and gas. I'm sorry, and we're already seeing evidence of it. I mean, just the other day, I saw gas in my neighborhood go up 10%, and then the following day, it went up 10%. So we will feel those very real consequences in our gas tanks if the United States enters. Well, from what I'm hearing today, there's no if. It sounds like we are. It's just a matter of when.
And just real quick before we go to the panel, I want you to give you an opportunity to kind of drill down on that last aspect, because often I think we get Middle Eastern fatigue in America. We're so used to America and Israel dropping bombs on some country in the Middle East, we don't really pay attention to the actual consequences. There's a reason we haven't bombed Iran, because they actually have the ability to punch back, as we're seeing in Israel right now as ballistic missiles are hitting hospitals and other facilities. A part of the Iranian response has been articulated all the way back to President Raisi and even to Ahmadinejad, was the idea of not just mining and shutting off the Straits of Hormuz, but also the destruction of the Suez Canal. I want people to understand that a few years ago, you had the Suez Canal shut down for like a week, and it closed down global shipping for over a year. Can you talk about what the real world implications would be of a war with Iran, where both the Straits of Hormuz were shut down, the Suez Canal was shut down, and then we're making the Malacca dilemma even worse for most people?
Well, one of the major consequences is just yesterday, Putin and Xi basically said, keep your hands off Iran. China gets about 20% of its oil and gas from Iran. Putin has, I should say Russia. Russia had entered an agreement in January with Iran, a strategic agreement saying that they will come to each other's aid. This agreement covers everything from energy to defense. So I had said, at the start of this, that Iran isn't what people think it is. That back and forth that Tucker Carlson did with Ted Cruz was important for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that he was trying to drill down on is, I said Iran ain't no punk. And what I mean by that is we are talking about 91 million people. We are talking about a very large continental sovereign country who has very important friends. China and Russia will come to Iran's aid. In Beijing, they are talking about this as Israel's I'm sorry, it literally just left my mind because I'm so overwhelmed with what's happening right now. It is, oh my goodness, I cannot believe it'll come back to me. But this isn't seen as something that needed to happen. This was an aggressive, I got it, Iran's Pearl Harbor. That's how Beijing is talking about what Israel did to Iran. And while I'm not going to sit here and say that there isn't a worry about Iran enriching, because if that weren't a worry, the Obama administration would have never entered into the JCPOA with them. That is a thing. That is a thing. But to use that as a reason to aggressively invade, that's another thing. It's kind of breaking the law. And so now you have the United States counting on Israel and the United States to win against Iran. It's not going to be that easy. Iran has friends. They have important friends. And to your point that you just made, their ballistic missile, they have about a total about 300 ballistic missiles, and they've only gone through about a fraction of those. Israel is having problems, having spent $67 billion in Gaza. They're spending $700 million a day trying to beat Iran. Their economy is struggling. Yes, so is Iran's economy struggling from all the sanctions. But again, Iran ain't no punk. It's not just going to roll over and capitulate because Trump thinks he's the strong guy from New York and thinks he's in a mob movie 24/7. That's not how this is going to happen.
I think that's an important point because people need to understand the difference between a nation state and a civilization state. A nation state like America or some of these other countries, where we've been around for a few hundred years, things have been great. When you're talking about civilization states, you're talking about the Indus Valley. You're talking about the Tigris and Euphrates. You're talking about the Yellow River. You're talking about Turkey, Iran, India, China. Civilizations that have been around for thousands of years, and you don't stick around that long, getting punked up by Donald Trump. I want to go to our panel, give them an opportunity to ask some questions about this. I'm going to go to Michael Imhotep first.
Hey, Nola, good to see you again. Thanks for this breakdown. Can you talk briefly about the relationship between Iran being overthrown in 1953 by the CIA and then also Great Britain and what became the British Petroleum Oil Company, please?
I am not about to sit here and talk about no CIA operations.
Oh, well, there's an article. The reason why I asked, there's a Washington Post article that came out June 19, 2025. The U.S. helped oust Iran's government in 1953. Here's what happened. So I was just tying all that together. Talk about what you want to deal with.
This is what I will say. To my earlier point, when you try to topple a regime, it never works out. We have made this mistake over and over and over. And here we are setting ourselves up for the same kind of mistake without the same sort of brain power in the room. Let's be very clear. We're not talking about smooth operators here. We are talking about people that are in the Capitol right now who literally operate as like the B-roll from some sort of like Goodfellas Part 5 or something. Like, I'm not even kidding when I say that, but to your point, it never works out. It literally never works out. And we're going to get drawn into this long, long thing. And it's not going to work out the way that they think it's going to work out.
I think to that point, we've spent $1 billion in the last 4 months, I think, bombing the Houthis as part of Operation Rough Riders. We bombed them for 5 months. It's been $1 billion. We lost 2 to 3 F-18s to drop to the bottom of the Red Sea. We still haven't beat them. And that is the B minor elite squad to Iran. And I want people to look at that map of the Middle East again and realize that Iran is not flat. Those are all mountains. It's almost impossible to invade that country. You can't do a sea-bound invasion. You can't invade through, there's literally one corridor where you can invade through. So if you think we're going to drop a couple bombs to be out by the weekend, you got another thing coming. Matt, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Dr. Hayes, good to see you. Quick question. What is your thought about how this reverberates out to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, some of the other countries that are near there, particularly with our relationship with Saudi Arabia? How does that affect our involvement and maybe escalation? And just what are your general insights in that respect?
I mean, instability, it's instability, even before the Trump administration, which I have some knowledge about in terms of how difficult navigating this very tenuous relationship between all of these different countries already was, right? We were inching towards having agreements between Saudi Arabia and Israel, not necessarily strategic partnerships, but some sort of a more friendly agreement, right? And then Hamas did what it did in October 2023. So the situation was already fraught. And right now, there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of insecurity. Donald Trump does this thing where he thinks it's cute. Oh, they don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it under my hat. He thinks that's cute. That's not how you do international security. That's not how you handle geopolitics, right? So it's going to cause a lot of instability, but where we're going to see it and why this matters for U.S. is we're going to see it at the gas tank. And we are already threatening inflation with tariffs and all these things. So it's just going to complicate an already fraught situation here at home and abroad.
And on
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Sorry, very quickly. Does that mean then you think that we'll be boots on the ground in Iran and then also in a lot of those surrounding countries for security purposes? I mean, what does that look like in terms of mobilization of forces?
Well, right now it's air and naval. In terms of boots on the ground, we do have a few boots on the ground helping man the THAAD batteries. In terms of will that look like more traditional conventional warfare with boots on the ground? I don't know. Directly in Iran, I've been thinking a great deal about that, but that doesn't mean not in other areas. To your point, that it may come to that.
Thank you.
And Doctor, I wanted to just kind of ask about what the terms are that President Trump is trying to push the Iranians towards when he talks about wanting to have a negotiation, wanting to have a deal. That if you look at what the JCPOA mandated, it was 3.67% enrichment. Now Iran's at 60%. They can be at 90% potentially within a year, which is necessary to get the 27 kilograms of enriched uranium needed for an atomic device. You then put it on a launcher, takes maybe another 6 months, and now you have a functioning nuclear weapon. From what it sounds like, the Trump administration is suggesting a nuclear consortium where Iran, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, UAE would share nuclear production, and therefore Trump would actually be able to essentially profit from this nuclear deal. Can you kind of talk about what exactly Trump is trying to get Iran to agree to?
Right. So, with Trump, it's always about how can he make a quick buck, right? There's everything from, let me back up a little bit. For whatever reason, this administration, you don't have to see anything. You don't have to see a plan. It changes from moment to moment. One moment it could be, completely abandoning their nuclear program to, like you said, this consortium deal. Again, this kind of opaqueness where Trump thinks it's cute. He thinks that's how you move and maneuver. That is not what you do diplomatically. That is not what you do in a foreign policy space, especially when you're talking about nuclear security. My worry is this, because of Israel's move, that this will actually quicken the pace of Iran actually developing, a weapon, if maybe they already haven't. And then I also want the viewers out there to understand something. So countries like China and Russia, one of the things that they have done when they come together, they always call the US out for our own hypocrisy. And so one of the things that's coming out of Beijing is that they are having a hard time with Israel's hypocrisy regarding their nuclear weapons that they have never said that they've had. Let's just be very clear about that. So while Israel is saying, Iran is enriching at 60%, and this is an existential threat to us, and I'm not saying that it's not, at the same time, you clandestinely also have these weapons that sometimes you make vague threats to use against other people. So this is a very interesting situation. Beijing is calling for the entire region to completely disarm, not to develop any further. That's what I think the smart action is, because we've seen over time from the 50s to the 70s to the 90s, this region is always ripe with tensions. And to think about all of these different countries having a nuclear capability, even though I definitely believe in mutually assured destruction as a form of deterrence, I don't know. The tensions, historical tensions are just always boiling up and boiling over. And what we have seen in the last couple of years is that they are willing to go there. And weapons technology has gotten a lot better. I think people tend to think about the Middle East as people living in these huts somewhere, amongst all this sand. That ain't it. That's not it. So I need people to understand where we are. This is a very dangerous moment, as weapons technology is in a place that it's never been in before. Production of drones are really cheap. Like I said earlier, Iran has, hundreds of ballistic missiles, and Israel is limping along. The Iron Dome isn't really performing the way that it performed before. So this is a layered situation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for keeping us updated on this. I remind people that the same way Israel secretly has nuclear weapons, Iran very well may have a whole basement full of them that we don't know about, that they bought from India or Pakistan or Russia or China. So maybe it ain't a good idea to go start bombing people when you don't know what they got. As we say in the outcast rules of Atlanta, don't pull the thing out unless you plan to bang. You better know those things. Thanks so much, Dr. Haynes, for being with us. We'll be back after the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
This week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie, we're talking faith, family, and fatherhood, from rebellion to rebuilding. Each of us has different things in our toolkit that we need to look at to determine how to establish a way forward. I know going forward is not easy, and most of you, like some people, don't like change. But as we talk about it, we grow together, we love together, we live together, and we laugh together. It gives us an opportunity to discover how to set the pace for what comes next for a healthy, happy, and whole life.
There has to be consistency in their lives that show that you care, for them to know that you're listening, and then that builds trust. And then once you build the trust, they'll begin to open up because you have become their safe place that they have been seeking.
That's all this week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here on Black Star Network.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, we have breaking news from I think they're going to get this up on the screen for you guys, from Dr. Boise Kimber, president of the National Baptist Convention. The National Baptist Convention USA highlights Target Corporation's partnership during National Convention in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm just going to read the press release to you guys. The National Baptist Convention USA is committed to ensuring that corporations that do business in our communities give back to and help rebuild and stabilize neighborhoods. The partnership with Target Corporation is based on our shared commitment to community empowerment through small businesses and entrepreneurship, development, investment in education and student support, and workforce and skill development unlocks growth across the communities. The NBC USA has been clear about our expectations that Target senior leadership have responded in a very positive way. We are working on a 3-year plan that will be very beneficial to the African American community. If I thought Target was not sincere in their commitment to the African American community, I would be the first one to pick at the picket line lines. Our communications with Target has been at the highest level, and we are continuing that dialogue. With the federal government making deep cuts in education, healthcare, and other essential services, we know the Black church will be called upon to stand in the gap. Our outreach programs serving both our congregations and the broader community must be fully resourced and to respond to the needs. I am proud to say that we will answer the call. Target's generous donation will help us provide scholarships, support senior citizens, and invest in entrepreneurship programs to uplift our communities and the future. The church must be a beacon that meets the spiritual and physical needs of our membership. Through partnership and with corporations like Target, we are better positioned to fulfill that mission. The NBC USA remains steadfast in our commitment to holding corporations accountable to ensure African Americans receive equitable opportunities in contracting, employment, and other vital areas of investment. The National Baptist Convention USA was founded in 1886 and is the nation's oldest and largest African American religious convention with over 31,000 churches and 7.5 million members. All right, so we're going to go straight to the panel on this. So it sounds like Target is working with the National Baptist Convention to come to a resolution on this year-long boycott. As many people know, the Trump administration, when they came in, did this massive rollback of what they call DEI, but what is really civil rights. They turned the clock back on many of the gains we've made when it comes to civil rights, and many corporations we saw folded, Target being one of them, getting rid of many of their diversity programs. If you went into a Target this week, you'll notice the Juneteenth exhibit was a whole lot smaller than it was a year ago, cutting back on affinity groups, etc. But Target is one of the corporations that's really been affected by the boycott movement, and it appears they're making movement potentially in a direction of supporting the community. So I'm going to go to the panel. Michael, what's your take on this?
Well, this is breaking news, and I'm trying to find an article on it, so not having been able to really read it. It sounds like there's going to be a rift between the National Baptist Convention and Pastor Jamal Bryant and his movement, because he said recently that they're going to keep the boycott of Target going. He said that he laid out 4 things on the agenda that he wanted Target to agree to. They agreed to the $2 billion in investment in Black-owned businesses, but the other 3 they didn't agree to. So for the National Baptist Convention, it sounds like now they've struck a deal with Target to now somehow help Black-owned businesses. It sounds like this is going to come to a head, and this is going to cause a rift in the African-American community and cause confusion also.
And Zachary, on that point, I can already see this is breaking news. I read it in real time. I was reading it at the same time y'all were hearing it. But it sounds like we're going to be a lot of discussion on this, particularly in social media and online. What's your take on this?
Everything that the devil stole, God is going to give it back to me and my community. I don't care what Target is doing to try to fix and mend these bridges. It is going to, until they give us every single thing that they've taken away from all marginalized communities, there will be, I will never shop there again. It's not going to happen. And I will continue to boycott and continue to call for our brothers and sisters to do that boycott, because that boycott is working and it's sending a national message. 12.4 billion in market value decrease, 3% drop from quarter to quarter, 5.7 drop year over year earnings. The earning impact down 36% compared to the previous year. Stock performance has fallen nearly 30%. Leadership impact, their CEO having to take a 43% cut. This is the power of the Black dollar at play. So they can go to any convention they want to go to. They can appeal in any way they want to appeal, get down on their knees and pray. Until they do right by me and mine, they will continue to fail.
And Matt, I think when people hear this, they're going to say, well, what are the details? What exactly is Target agreeing to do? They've got the National Baptist Convention on their side. Do you think we should give them at least an opportunity to hear them out? Or should we keep the boycott going regardless and expand it if nothing else?
No, I think we should take the words of our boy Future, chase a check, because that's what they did. They chased the check. This is about a check, and this is about Target wanting to improve its image. I don't think we should hear them out, and I'm disappointed that the National Baptist Convention did this. I mean, I understand that everybody has its own self-interest, but one, to create the rift that I think Michael is talking about, when you have the momentum that Dr. Zach is talking about, at least at this juncture, to me seems to be unnecessary. It seems like they tried to sanitize it by saying, look, we understand that this donation is going to be necessary with some of the rollback and some of that. Nah, forget that, because what happened is Target messed around and found out, and now they're trying to clean up their image, and they're writing a big check to the National Baptist Convention. And when you take that check, it affects your credibility. So no, I don't think we should give them a pass. Whether that should be an interminable boycott is a different conversation, but I'm not saying, oh, it's okay because you wrote a big check, because you shouldn't be having to write a big check if you had put your money where your mouth was on your, commitment to DEI.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this with Congressman Jackson later, who's been working in Congress on dealing with some of these DEI issues. As I said, this is breaking news. We'll have more on this beginning of the week. I'm sure Roland will have a full breakdown on this breaking news coming in right now. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back afterwards. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be back after the break.
This week on the other side of change.
State of the Democratic Party.
What are the barriers preventing us from seeking true liberation and including more voices in that process?
They overlook Black organizers, young Black people, the work that we do all throughout the year. But then when the election cycle comes around, now all of a sudden they want to listen to us, listen in quotation marks. Now all of a sudden they want our labor and our contributions. And it's just like, for me, I'm at the point where it's like, no, we're not doing that.
Tune in only on the other side of change on the Black Star Network.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Devon Franklin. It is always a pleasure to be in the house. You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay right
here. Yesterday we honored the 160th anniversary of Juneteenth. And when you look at what happened when President Biden made it a federal holiday in 2021, the MAGA folks immediately lost their minds. I don't know why, because President Trump was a proponent of this in his first term. He's the one who suggested making Juneteenth an actual holiday. But then when President Biden did it, we saw yesterday President Trump sending out a tweet saying, we got entirely too many unpaid holidays. So Roland had something to say about these people and their backlash to Juneteenth. Let's play the video of Roland.
All right, folks, I am here in St. Louis County today giving a Juneteenth speech to the Jubilee Project here. But there were some things that I needed to say that I could not wait until Monday when it comes to what we have seen in the past 24 hours as this nation has commemorated and celebrated Juneteenth as a federal holiday. If you want to understand how anti-Black Donald Trump and his administration is, and MAGA is, all you have to do is look at what took place yesterday. So first and foremost, at the White House, Donald Trump's chief liar, White House spokeswoman, Carolyn Leavitt, was asked the question by the reporters what Trump was doing or were they going to do anything when it came to Juneteenth. This is how she responded.
Juneteenth, does the president plan to commemorate the holiday today or make any comment on it?
I'm not tracking his signature on a proclamation today. I know this is a federal holiday. I want to thank all of you for showing up to work. We are certainly here. We're working 24/7 right now. Nikki, go ahead.
Actually, that was my question. Will he plan to mark Juneteenth in any way, either today or with an event later on, maybe next week?
Sure. I just answered that question for you.
Okay, so you sat there and you heard her response. Later in the day, Donald Trump decides to release a statement on Truth Social. And this is exactly what he said. Pull the tweet up, or pull his Truth Social post up. Too many non-working holidays in America. It is costing our country billions of dollars to keep all of these businesses closed. The workers don't want it either. Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every once working day of the year. What the hell is that? It must change if we are going to make America great again. Don't you find it interesting that he decided to release that post on Juneteenth? So I wonder what day he's talking about. Now, why is he a fraud? Because this is the same Donald Trump. Remember that trash plan he released, his so-called platinum plan? I called it a tinfoil plan. What was in that plan? pull it up. Look at what it says right here. Make Juneteenth a national holiday. So what does that tell you? We knew he was a liar. We knew he wasn't serious about that plan. We knew it was a joke and we called it out. And you see the result of us calling it out. And this is who these people are. They are beyond despicable. And so let's take Charlie Kirk, okay? Trump, one of Trump's biggest supporters, Turning Point USA. So Charlie Kirk he was on a rampage yesterday. First of all, this is the same person who has been against us celebrating Dr. King's birthday as a federal holiday. So he decided to trash Juneteenth over and over and over again. He made a series of tweets that I want you to understand, where he said that first and foremost, his Turning Point USA, they are not going to be celebrating Juneteenth. Then check this out. He posted this right here. Y'all gonna get a kick out of this one. This tweet, he goes, remember, the holiday being observed today is not simply Juneteenth. The official name of this holiday, as declared in the 54-word bill Congress passed to create this holiday in 2021, is Juneteenth, National Independence Day. It's a bizarre name. The original Juneteenth had nothing to do with national independence. It was about the emancipation of slaves in Texas. You still are a liar. The real reason it's called that is because our real Independence Day is just 2 weeks later. The goal of the Juneteenth holiday is to displace the unifying importance of the 4th of July and to replace America's racist founding with a new one that places DEI and left-wing race politics at the center of our national myth. That is why Turning Point will never observe this holiday. America has one Independence Day for all Americans. It's July 4th and always will be. Really? I find that to be really interesting, Charlie Kirk. And then again, there were numerous other tweets that he posted trashing Juneteenth. For instance, he had another tweet, Juneteenth should not be a federal holiday. Okay, he sent that tweet out as well. Okay, then let's see, was there another one? Let's see right here. There may have been another one. And no, that's it. So there you go. Okay, so that was his position on Juneteenth. Let's go back to the same Charlie Kirk when Republicans were in charge. He sent this tweet out on June 19, 2020. Today is Juneteenth, celebrating the end of slavery in the United States. Now, Charlie Kirk is a college dropout. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And I'm gonna get to that a little bit later. He goes, this was made possible thanks to Republican President Abraham Lincoln. Today, Democrats are fighting to tear down his statue. So you liked Juneteenth when Trump was there, but you don't like the fact now that it was President Joe Biden that signed it into law for Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. Well, let's just keep in mind, you can blame Kentucky Senator Rand Paul because he was the one who stopped it, the unanimous consent for that happening. But let's go to another tweet from Charlie Kirk. He posted after that one, Senate Republicans are introducing legislation to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in the White House for 8 years. Why didn't they ever do it? I find that to be fascinating. So Charlie Kirk, 5 years ago, was lauding Republicans on Juneteenth, but now all of a sudden, Juneteenth is a horrible holiday and it should not be celebrated. I got you. So let me now deal with this idea of history, because this has been driving me crazy. And Charlie Kirk's ignorance is showing right there, okay? And in fact, I was looking at some tweets earlier from conservative Eric Erickson, a radio talk show host out of Georgia. And Eric's a very smart guy. He's a lawyer, he's very smart. But being smart doesn't mean you actually know what the hell you're talking about. And Eric really has no idea what the hell he's talking about when it comes to Juneteenth and history and facts and things along those lines. So I was traveling today, and I saw this, and I went, dude, you really need to go to a real history class. Because see, part of the problem here is white his story, but it's not actually real history, okay? So I'm looking at this. So this is what Eric Erickson tweets. He said, I'm fine with Juneteenth as a holiday. I find the history fascinating. It's nice to have a holiday besides Memorial Day to honor the end of the Civil War. But it is not Independence Day, and we should make sure those who co-opted to undermine July 4th are not successful. Has Eric Erickson ever read Frederick Douglass's speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July? Has Charlie Kirk ever read that? See, the reason I raise that question is because I don't think these people have any understanding of history. See, white Americans love to tout July 4th, not realizing that when America gained its independence, that didn't exist for people of African descent who were enslaved. It's no different when you talk about Texas independence, okay? When Texas seceded from Mexico. You might have seen my video of ripping the History Channel apart for lying in their docuseries or omitting the fact that slavery was the root cause for Texas independence. And so Juneteenth, Independence Day, that is the Independence Day for black people or people of African descent, because that's when we became free. July 4th was not our holiday. Those are facts, whether they want to accept that or not. But let's also deal with some facts. First and foremost, Juneteenth did not free the slaves. Let me unpack that. President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, assigns the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves in states that were rebelling against the Union. That's the Confederate States. People need to understand that the states that were still a part of the Union, slavery still existed. 4 border states. What were they? The state that I'm in right now, Missouri, Maryland, Kentucky, Delaware. Yes, even though after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, slavery continued in those areas. Now, let me go to the next one. They keep saying that when it came to the issue of, the Emancipation Proclamation ended the Civil War. No, it did not. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1st, 1863. The Civil War did not end until April 9th, 1865. Y'all, that's 2 years later. What are folks talking about? Now, when people then say, well, okay, it ended slavery, it did not. When General Gordon Granger came to Texas, he actually issued General Order Number 3. Do you know what that actually said? He was enforcing the proclamation. It did not end slavery. It also was not representing the end of the Civil War. So again, Eric Erickson is dead wrong. The Radical Republicans in January of 1865 introduced the 13th Amendment, what is called one of 3 Reconstruction Amendments. What then happened was they passed it, Congress passed it, but a constitutional amendment has to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. It went to the states. December 6th, 1865, it was fully ratified. Then it was accepted on December 18th, 1865, thus becoming law. But that ended chattel slavery. It did not end slavery. If you read the 13th Amendment, the language is still there in the 13th Amendment. Slavery still exists in the United States. And again, if you just read the language, it says the U.S. So again, this is what it says. neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. These are the facts. And so these white conservatives, they've never cared about discussing slavery. They've never cared talking about the impact of slavery. They don't care. So the Eric Ericksons of the world want to switch this and, oh no, Juneteenth is a celebration of the end of the Civil War, which is a lie. People of African descent in Texas, when they got word 2 years later, the white folks in Texas knew they were holding them captive. They knew what Lincoln had ordered, but they chose to ignore it. So black folks weren't just jumping up and down. No, they were angry and pissed off that they didn't know for 2 years earlier. So if we're gonna sit here and talk about Juneteenth, we're gonna get the facts right. We're gonna get the information right. And what we're not going to do is allow white conservatives and Donald Trump and MAGA to attack this holiday, to attack what took place, and act like what happened is wrong. And all of y'all can go to hell if you want to get rid of Juneteenth, because guess what? It's a federal holiday and it ain't going anywhere. So I don't give a damn what you think, Donald Trump. Charlie Kirk, you can kiss my ass and go to hell as well, because we do not care. At the end of the day, for us, Juneteenth is our day. And if y'all want to understand the July 4th, wait until we air for you the reading of What to the Slave is the 4th of July. I had numerous people, activists and entertainers and others who read portions of that. And trust me, if you go read that speech or listen to Ossie Davis reciting that speech, you will realize how Frederick Douglass, a Republican, laid into America when it came to how people of African descent view the 4th of July, because when that day is celebrated, we were not included. All right, folks, that's it for me here in St. Louis. I'm gonna toss it back to the studio. I will see you guys tomorrow when we're live in Virginia. Thanks a bunch. Enjoy the day. Holla.
All right, well, it's great to hear from Roland. You know, no matter where Roland was at, he was going to have something to say about this. I'm glad we had the opportunity to hear directly from him. We're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to give the panel a chance to respond on the other side. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, Dexter Jenkins is a faith-based financial mentor with more than 20 years in the financial services industry. He's passionate about helping families build generational wealth.
Even though I'm talking about things like prayer, I'm talking about things about reading the word, I'm talking about things like fellowship, I'm talking to members who are dealing with losing their houses, or I'm talking to members who, because of a lack of the handling their finances, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so what I'm finding is that they're not coming to church because they don't have a handle on their finances.
We're talking how to get wealthy through faith and our finances on the next Get Wealthy, right here, only on Black Star Network.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Well, the disrespect continues. In North Carolina, a black woman is going viral for how she handled racism with grace after employees at Synergy Auto Care in Wilson, North Carolina made slick remarks about reparations. She didn't argue. She just walked out. Now an employee at the auto shop released the video and this statement, thinking folks would be on their side. So they said, so today's wow moment, we have multiple customers in our waiting room while their vehicles are being serviced, and we we were checking our till to see if we needed any extra change because the banks will be closed tomorrow for Juneteenth holiday tomorrow. A customer overheard us say the banks were closed and asked us why they were closed. Our manager responded, well, it's Juneteenth, a federal holiday. They added a few years ago. The customer said, okie doke, and our greeter said, I know, right? Just a generic response. No faster than she finished speaking did another customer stand up and give me my effing truck, pull my effing truck around, give me my keys. I don't want nothing done here. Caught everyone completely off guard. I followed the customer outside to ask her what happened since it was all so fast. She told me she was going to leave with this and that we are racist. I said, ma'am, I was right there and nobody said or did anything out of their way towards you or anyone else inside. She told me, we all laughed at her and we're chuckling and mocking the holiday and that I didn't know how that made her feel because she was black. She said, I am still going to live with this. I told her if that was the case, I was going to go ahead and post the CCTV footage so we are not unfairly judged off of one side of the event. I generally don't entertain these kinds of things, but when you bend over backwards for all your customers, no matter who they are, it stings to be accused of hateful things. I'm attaching the video so anyone stumbles across the hate post or video with Synergy Auto Care that focus at the focus, you'll have seen the actual interaction for yourself. Here is the video.
We're at the overstop this morning. Oh, then we're good, yeah.
Yeah, the first when I went to the bank, I got it.
Yeah, that was fine. I can do you already. That was fine.
Okay.
Going all over. 1 to 2, we're still stacked.
Why are the banks closed tomorrow?
Juneteenth. The new holiday they did a few years ago.
Okie dokie then.
I know, right? Pull my fucking truck. Pull my truck around. Please. Pull my truck around. And give me my keys to my truck. I don't want this done. Please go get my truck. Thank you. Is it this one right here? Yeah, no, it's a Mercury problem. What's that?
We can allow you. Hey, Matt, we said Juneteenth was the holiday tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not. Like,
we got mad about it.
He was like,
Yeah, that's why the banks were closed for the Juneteenth.
I don't even know what is Juneteenth.
Exactly, nobody really knows, but I think it's something to do with reparations or something.
Yeah.
Well, that offensive stance didn't work out too well for Synergy Auto Care. The viral video got thousands of comments and reactions. So it was so bad that Synergy Auto Care deleted not only the video, but also its Facebook page. And here in D.C., listen to how a white woman described Juneteenth.
Juneteenth is, excuse me, bull. What's happening to the white people? They have a Black Miss America. They have a Black college. They have a Black month. What do we have? And now they have Juneteenth. Yes, I understand there was slavery, don't get me wrong. But there was also a Holocaust, and that was more recent than slavery. But you don't hear the Jews saying, gimme, 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 gimme. What's the point of Juneteenth? What is it? I don't know.
And it is this white grievance, it is this kind of pain that they are feeling that we're seeing being enacted by the federal government when it comes to the reality of many of these situations. And if we're not going to do anything about this, we're not going to have a real conversation, then we can expect this to continue happening. I want to go to the panel real quick. Michael, why do you think these people are so, as the young people say, butthurt over black folks having a holiday?
Because they're stupid. That's why. They're stupid. Okay, let me break this down because I've been doing a lot of presentations dealing with Juneteenth. I've done one for Wayne County Community College for professors there, blew them away. I've done one past. I was on the Carl Nelson show, WOLB, out of Baltimore yesterday morning. Juneteenth is an opportunity to force into a national conversation a history that Republicans and state legislatures are passing laws to suppress the teaching of that history, and you have an attack from the federal government as well on African American history also. So Americans are very ignorant of history. First of all, if we deal with this, Juneteenth first of all, goes back to 1866, and African Americans have been celebrating that since 1866. Okay, Major General Gordon Granger delivering General Order Number 3. I like Roland's video, but I just got to interject here. The Civil War continued for another 16 months after April 9th, 1865, when General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. And there was a battle in Texas, actually May 12, 1865, the Battle of Palmito Ranch, which was the last land battle of the Civil War. It took place right there in Texas. So when you study that history, even though General Robert E. Lee surrendered, there were other Confederate generals who had smaller armies, like General Joseph E. Johnston, or that racist Nathan Bedford Forrest, who in 1867 became the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Roland is correct. December 18th, 1865, the 13th Amendment is adopted. That's when Kentucky and Delaware abolished slavery. So what you see in the media, and part of it pisses me off by white-controlled media when they put this false information out, Delaware and Kentucky didn't abolish slavery until 6 months after Juneteenth. So how could Juneteenth be the last day of slavery? They don't want to tell the truth. And then when you deal with the Emancipation Proclamation, we know that Maryland didn't abolish slavery till May 1st, 1864, when they put it on the ballot, and it almost did not pass. The Washington Post has an excellent article called The Not Quite Free State of Maryland. We know Tennessee didn't abolish slavery till February 22nd, 1865. That's 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. And Roland's actually correct. And I tell people to read these original documents. Go to archives.gov, U.S. National Archives, or Library of Congress website, loc.gov. The Emancipation Proclamation was a military strategy that Lincoln was implementing to try to bring the South back into the Union. The initial Emancipation Proclamation was September 22nd, 1862, and it stated that the states and territories in rebellion, if they did not come back into the Union by January 1st, 1863, that their slaves would be set free. He had no authority to do that, but Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, and Delaware were allowed to keep their slaves. So we really have to get deep into this history, separate fact from fiction. And lastly, when we deal with why those slaves were still being held in Texas, is because the Texas State Confederate Constitution of 1861 banned freeing the slaves. Even in a slave owner's will, it was illegal to free them. That's why there were 250,000 enslaved Africans, and all of those people did not get the word on January 19th. Major General Gordon Granger and the 2,000 Union troops, most of them African-American men, go throughout Texas to physically bring Texas back into the Union. So it takes a period of time to do this. June 19th was the date agreed upon to celebrate freedom coming to Texas, but everybody did not get the word on June 19th either.
And I think that information is so important, Dr. Kirk, because when we have these conversations, it's almost as if you heard the lady in the last video. They don't want us to have nothing. Why do you think that it goes that deep, or we can't even honor a symbolic date? It's not like we're saying, let's celebrate Nat Turner's birthday. Let's celebrate the Stone Oak Rebellion. Let's celebrate John Brown. Let's have Haitian Independence Day where we celebrate. We're celebrating Juneteenth. Why do you think the hatred goes so deeply?
The hatred goes so deeply because these people are willfully ignorant. She needs to be worried about getting a washcloth and sunscreen instead of worried about what Black people are celebrating and what they have earned She is the epitome of what is wrong with the entire MAGA movement. There are people sitting in the poorest county in Kentucky. It's the poorest county in the United States of America. The name fails me. Where you have 96% of the people living at the poverty rate. 90+% of them lack health insurance, but over 98% of them voted for Donald Trump because they are more concerned about Black people not having something that they themselves choose to also not have. She has her priorities all misconstrued. But it's not only her. It also goes back to the president, the man who's sitting in the White House, who initially proposed a holiday, but who then, as we saw from Roland's video, came out and said that it was too many unpaid days off. While this man takes unpaid weekends every single weekend and golfs at Mar-a-Lago, while he should be instead worried about how to de-escalate the Middle East. And I just wanted to make sure that your viewers know that while on yesterday, Donald Trump came out and said that we don't deserve a Juneteenth, that this is a holiday that should not be celebrated in America, the former president of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden, who is battling prostate cancer, got on a plane, flew to Galveston, Texas to celebrate Juneteenth at a black church with the people of Galveston, Texas, with the mother of Juneteenth and the people that brought this holiday to light and who fought this holiday. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that too, because it's a tale of two presidents and two different ways they're trying to approach this holiday.
Well, elections matter. Matt, right, real quick before we go to break.
My mother is from the Texas City, Galveston area. My great-grandfather had a church there. My people are there. So somebody in my family literally may have been there on this day and learned. And what it comes down to is racism. They don't care about us. They hate the fact that they are not the center. And when I say they, I mean primarily white people. I mean, just look at this. People are saying, well, this lady saying, what about the white people? Why don't we get more? And it's crazy because in this country where chattel slavery is the country's original sin, and, you know, it's clearly a day of independence, they are miffed by the idea that anything would come in and affect July 4th being their Independence Day. It's purely racism. There's no other way to say it. And, you know, announcing it on that day or posting it on Truth Social on that day is purposeful. But I don't think there's any euphemism or any intellectualizing hate. That's all this is. This is hate. And I think we're very soon going to be back in the point where it is okay to say the N-word openly because you see MAGA increasing that rhetoric and fomenting that hate, and I think we're sliding towards that place. So that's where we are.
You're absolutely correct. All right, we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to keep this conversation going on the other side. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
This week on the other side of change.
State of the Democratic Party.
What are the barriers preventing us from seeking true liberation and including more voices in that process?
They overlook Black organizers, young Black people, the work that we do all throughout the year. But then when the election cycle comes around, now all of a sudden they want to listen to us, listen in quotation marks. Now all of a sudden they want our labor and our contributions. And it's just like, for me, I'm at the point where it's like, no, we're not doing that.
Tune in only on the other side of change on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, as many guys know, I left my radio show about a year ago to take a job over on Capitol Hill, working directly for the man we're bringing up, Congressman Jackson, who's been a real leader in this conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion in Congress. Congressman Jackson, how are you doing?
How are you doing? Great to see you.
Great to see you also. And so we're talking about this Juneteenth rollback, President Trump's statement that he made yesterday. And so I wanted to throw it to you because you've been a real leader in Congress on this issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what the Trump administration has been doing to kind of roll back many of the advancements we've made. What's your take on President Trump saying that we have too many unpaid holidays on Juneteenth?
Yeah, well, some of the states across the South should get rid of their continued celebration of Confederates Day that they have put in. We should honor the people that have been overlooked and those that have been honorable. It's unfortunate that so many states decided to honor the worst of Americans, those that have perpetuated and tried to maintain slavery. And no, I don't agree that we have too many holidays. We may have too many of the wrong holidays and celebrating some of the wrong people. But no, we should honor and celebrate. It gives us a chance to reflect so we can move forward. And there's healing, there's reconciliation. And that's the only way to go forward. You don't want to erase our collective country's memory. And unfortunately, that's been the history of our nation.
You know, to that point, you sit on the House Agricultural Committee, and we've seen the Agriculture Committee talk about slashing as much as $149 million from diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, things that help Black farmers. Can you talk a little bit about why you've taken up this area of advocacy where many people don't understand how the Department of Agriculture directly affects them on a daily basis, particularly when it comes to these cuts to SNAP benefits?
Well, everyone eats, so we have something to say about agriculture. It's so important. This is just cruel. And what they're saying is people that are making, on average, $6.10 per day in food assistance, $180 maximum for the month, that they have too much. In a world of inflation, people don't have enough money to eat now. And this is supplemental nutritional assistance. This is not an entire meal. People have more months than they have money. Malnutrition, 41 million people in the United States of America need this program. I believe that the government should expand when people are having hard times, and government should help people when they can't do for themselves. And government ought to be reduced when times are well, and so that government doesn't interfere. Right now, we're seeing that people need more assistance, which tells you that something is fundamentally out of sync. And as he pushes through, not just cuts for food assistance and cuts for health care for the poor, he's also pushing forward with cuts for taxes, meaning the wealthy can retain more of their wealth. The good thing about America is you pay taxes if you make money. If you don't make money, you don't pay taxes. So it should be honorable that you pay taxes. And his spirit is just totally wrong. So as a consequence, he wants to see more people, documented or undocumented, hungry, citizens or non-citizens, hungry. And this is the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We have enough to make it. And think about it, Brother Patillo, is that he's talking about up to $4 trillion in taxes. And we've talked about this sometime before. And people get millions, billions, and trillions kind of confused. But a million seconds is 11.7 days. A billion seconds is 31 years. A trillion seconds is 31,000 years. He's talking about moving upwards of $4 trillion off the tax rolls at the same time while he's trying to expand our military and our wars abroad.
And on that point, you had an opportunity to talk to this agricultural secretary about this last week. And it's interesting because they go through all this. We have to get rid of DEI. What Elon say, DEI is really DIE. It really means did not earn it, etc. But and I think the control room might have this video. Let me know if you guys do. You really keyed in with the agricultural secretary on what exactly they meant when they were talking about getting rid of DEI programs, when they talked about getting rid of the quote-unquote woke agenda. What did you find out when you questioned the agricultural secretary?
Well, and she had also talked about being colorblind. And I said, do you want people that have visual impairments to work in the Department of Agriculture? So what exactly do you mean by colorblind? This is on your website. I said, are you saying, do you mean to say you're talking about not to have any race consciousness? You don't want to deal with racial equity and racial justice? Well, I don't think we should be targeting and trying to have preference for people that have different physical impairments. That's not fair. So these are veiled attempts and terms to try to diminish the fight for racial justice. And some people, and I hope our community continues to respond with righteous indignation that this is another way of saying black. So yes, we are DEI, and we definitely earned everything that we've gotten. We've been more excellent. Now we've got Pete Hegseth. He's definitely didn't earn it. You've got Naomi over Homeland Security. She's definitely didn't earn it. You've got someone that's not capable of doing the job and raising the standard of character in the White House. He definitely didn't earn it and definitely doesn't deserve it. So we should not back away. Every time they say DEI, they cut something black. They say DEI and they take out the memory of Jackie Robinson. They say DEI, they take out the memory of Medgar Evers and Harriet Tubman. They say DEI, they stop the enforcement of civil rights legislation. They say DEI, which is code word for not hiring any more African American and Latino and Native American students. So we have to put our stake in the ground. There's nothing else for us to negotiate. The Democrats have to step up and step out and be on the right side of history and fight for DEI. If we don't have it, there are no other programs in place. That's why we have to fight.
You're absolutely correct. And as you always say, anybody who didn't have rights in 1776, you are diversity. That means veterans, that means disabled people, that means women. If you weren't on the Mayflower heading over here, you are DEI. I want to touch on a couple more things from this week because, of course, immigration has been in the news. President Trump last week attacked Governor Pritzker. He attacked Chicago by name, talking about they will be the next cities to be militarized, essentially the way that we're seeing in Los Angeles. We were talking earlier about Iran and Iraq. I do want to get your opinion on that. Iran and Israel, I want to get your opinion on that. But right now, there are 2,500 U.S. troops stationed in Iraq. There are 5,000 stationed in Los Angeles to quell free speech and to stop people from being able to protest ICE. Pursuant to that, you led 2 congressional delegations to ICE facilities this week. Can you talk a little bit about why you guys went to the ICE facilities and what happened when you got there?
Well, in Article 1 of the Constitution, and you're a brilliant lawyer, you know this, Robert, it's our job to have oversight. We're supposed to show up at federal facilities. We're supposed to know what's going on. This is checks and balances. This is why there was massive protests last week for having a no kings day, because only a king would have this unchecked unilateral authority and power. That's not how the United States is set up. A billionaire and a housekeeper, the poorest man and the richest man on voting day are equal in the eyes of the law. And we want to make sure that we keep that. What Mr. Trump is saying is that he wants to have the sole arbitrary and capricious power to determine our laws and what's just and right. So you've gotten people that are going missing on the streets of America. They're being abducted, not being arrested, they're being kidnapped. Nobody knows where they've gone. It's a very painful call that we've been receiving in some of our offices where people say, I don't know where my mother is. I don't know where my father is. They literally don't know whether they should call the police department or if ICE has picked up somebody. We can do this in a decent and a normal order. If Mr. Trump was strong, he'd be trying to create laws and having them enacted. No, he doesn't do that. He in turn tries to do executive order and circumvent the law. That's why he's got 220 lawsuits, 98 injunctions going against him. It's lawlessness. And a touching scenario I saw this past week, there were 2 young men in the military outside of one of the ICE check-in facilities. They were called the Reyes brothers. I didn't know if they were there for the National Guard or I didn't know what their role was, if there was more policing. No, these 2 young men, brothers, were in their full military outfit from boots to hat, and they stood at attention outside of this facility. And I approached them and asked them, were they there with the National Guard or what brought them there? They said, we've come here to make sure our mother is okay. We've got young men in the military that are willing to put their lives on the line, and at the same time, they're concerned whether or not their mother is going to be abducted, kidnapped, and mistreated in the United States of America. Went to another detention facility where people are sleeping on the floor, people being picked up and being whisked away to another state, and women not having hygiene products and sleeping on concrete floors, being stripped from there like children. This is indecent. It's immoral. We're saying put an end to that. Let's deal with an immigration reform and a policy, and let's treat all human beings, documented or undocumented, with dignity and with humanity.
And this is why it's so important that we have the type of leadership that's willing to stand up to these things. We saw in recent years, Congress got a little bit quiet. It's good to see people making noise again. We're going to go to the panel. Attorney Manning, do you have a question for Congressman Jackson?
Yes, I'll keep it very short. Congressman, good evening to you. Very quick question for you. This is kind of a hard question, but I'd like you to answer it as candidly as you feel. What is the sentiment of your Republican colleagues on the Agriculture Committee? And I ask because we've seen video on this very show of people in Iowa screaming down Chuck Grassley when they're angry about, rollback to farmers' funds. So I'm wondering if this is kind of a concession in that respect. And I'm interested in if any of your Republican colleagues behind closed doors are talking about changing any of that agricultural policy because they're afraid of getting primaried by being in lockstep with Mr. Trump. What's your position kind of on what you're seeing in that regard?
Well, there are a few people that I strongly and vehemently disagree with on the committee that I've seen a level of indecency. And then for the most part, I've seen very decent people. But I tell you, the votes are things that are very troubling. I tell you the reason I think they're voting in this manner that's not consistent what I perceive to be their values is out of fear. They've been given misinformation. I've asked them, well, can you show me where you're getting these numbers from? And 2 or 3 people told me, look it up on the internet. I'm like, can we just agree on the same numbers? Like, just tell me where you're getting your numbers from. Well, Mr. Trump is twisting arms. When we have a close vote, all of a sudden you can be on the floor and see certain members having to take a call from President Trump or having to take a ride over to the White House. Remember January 20th when he was sworn in? He also signed the executive order to release the people that were insurrectionists from January 6th. On that day, he empowered a militia. So there's quite a few people, as Senator Murkowski has said, are operating in fear and threats and intimidation. The physical threats. We had an emergency call with Leader Jeffries this past week because there are so many death threats on so many elected officials. There are 1 or 2 people in jail today for credible death threats against me. And this is now historically what's happened on the agriculture bill is when people disagree, the Democrats and Republicans, they push it all in the ag bill and it went by unanimously. This is the first time there's this level of friction and fighting over should women and children get food benefits. They want to raise the age of able-bodied people to work that have to take care of their parents, their children, that may be facing age discrimination from 55 to 65. Even under the Clinton administration, under welfare reform, they knew you had to cap it at 54 years of age. Now they want to take it even further to put burdens on people. So, no, there's some decent people, but the votes are very indecent.
Michael, do you have a question?
Yes, Representative Jonathan Jackson. This is Michael M. Hotep. When we look at the 145 USDA grants totaling $148 million, they were doing things, these DEI grants, they were doing things such as expanding access to land, capital, and markets for underserved producers, environmental justice through urban forestry, et cetera. Also, education for socially disadvantaged farmers. Can you talk briefly about any examples of how any of these programs that you know of were actually helping African-American farmers, please?
Yeah, well, certainly. So there's one program on urban farming where people are able to source food from their local neighborhoods and sell them into federal and state institutions such as the school. Great program to teach young people in the city about farming. That was a great program. Forestation, being able to manage the wildlands. As the world gets hotter and the cities get hotter, you also see in the Black communities, we don't have enough trees in most of our areas. We have more concrete, a higher carbon footprint that's leading to a lot of other negative impacts. There was a pathway that was being created to teach people in the urban markets about food. Somebody asked me, why did I want to be on the agriculture department? I said, because everybody eats. And if you look at how the ag works in America, every state except for Hawaii, the biggest industry is agriculture. America has a tremendous gift. We can feed the world. And many of these programs that happened in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s excluded African Americans. And so there's much work to be done. That's why we've gone from roughly 15 million acres to less than 1 million acres today. We did not get the access to the tools of crop insurance, of the Federal Home Loan Bank, of many other programs that are tucked in there. I'll tell you one other thing. All municipalities under 50,000 qualify for programs under the Department of Agriculture. Some of those programs that you were talking about with DEI were education programs, on-ramps, that were going to make the Department of Education do outreach to bring African Americans in where they had been excluded, where people in state legislatures and state ag departments simply did not advertise and did not show all the resources. It mirrors the same issues on subprime loans, where people that qualified for prime loans were not offered the prime loans. They were forced into subprime loans, although they had good credit. And so the loans simply weren't being made available. The Department of Agriculture has a lot of resources like that we should be tapping into.
And Dr. Zachary, I want to give you an opportunity to ask a question also.
Very quick, Representative Jackson, it's great to see you again, my friend, and wonderful for you to join us. I have a very quick question for you that I think is always important to kind of bring this in to kind of wrap things up. So appreciative of you and our 62 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, the conscience of the Congress. What can we do as regular citizens to support the work and the vision that you and Minority Leader Jeffries have cast out as you are fighting against these cuts? You are fighting to save diversity, equity, inclusion. You're fighting for the rights of our migrants and our brothers and sisters across the country, especially knowing how Trump is planning to target our Democratic strongholds like Chicago. What can we, the people, do to support you and this work?
Well, thank you so much. We have to make sure I see the glass as half full. This is one part the worst of times, but it also, I think it is the best of times because you get to see who people really are. People are showing their colors. Certain corporations stood up for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Others that did not want to be a part of it have quickly abandoned it. I hope people have participated in the No Kings March. I would encourage everybody, don't look back at the Civil Rights Days. You're in the greatest era of the civil rights challenges right now. We first have to make sure our people are getting registered to vote. Mr. Trump did not have a landslide. It was 1.5% margin to his victory. It was less than 800,000 votes within 7 states. There were 5 million people unregistered in just those 7 states, not including the people that were registered that did not go out to vote. On average, it was 35%, 40% voter participation and turnout. In some ways, we lost by the margin of people's despair. So I would say continue to educate, to let people know that they do have the power. This bill that came out of the United States House of Representatives on one big, brutal, ugly bill passed by one vote. African Americans right now aren't being represented in the United States Congress because Sheila Jackson Lee died, and then Mayor Turner, who became Congressman Turner, he died, and Governor Greg Abbott won't set a date for the election to put that congressional seat back on the map. And that's one vote. So every vote does count. And I would tell people, stay encouraged. I would tell people, remember what happened in the state of Georgia. We would not have Senator Raphael Warnock there except for those 11,700 and I think 82 or 85 votes. Every vote did count. Those 11,000 students just in the Clark Atlanta AU Center made the difference on having a United States Senator. So we have the power. Now we have to continue to vote our numbers.
All right, thank you so much, Congressman Jackson. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Make sure you go to his website, jonathanjackson.house.gov, for more information on what he has going on. Next week, he'll be introducing the Major Taylor Gold Medal Act, and of course, we want to make sure we talk about that. We're going to throw to a quick break. We'll be back. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Thanks so much, Congressman.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, Dexter Jenkins is a faith-based financial mentor with more than 20 years in the financial services industry. He's passionate about helping families build generational wealth.
Even though I'm talking about things like prayer, I'm talking about things about reading the word, I'm talking about things like fellowship, I'm talking to members who are dealing with losing their houses, or I'm talking to members who, because of a lack of the handling their finances, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so what I'm finding is that they're not coming to church because they don't have a handle on their finances.
We're talking how to get wealthy through faith and our finances on the next Get Wealthy right here, only on Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, before we run out of time, we'll go through our panel, give each of you the opportunity. What was your big takeaway from today, and particularly these attacks on Juneteenth? Let's start with you, Dr. Zachary.
You know, the key takeaway is that we have to continue to fight for our history. You know, our ancestors built this country from the ground up. And as a result, their descendants, are owed a debt of gratitude instead of being forgotten, being replaced, and being erased. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the Trump administration. And so we have to continue to fight. But more importantly than just simply continuing to fight, we have to continue to educate and continue to teach our children and the generations that are coming behind us the value of who we are and our worth in this nation. That's my key takeaway from here, and that's my work and charge going forward.
Absolutely. And Michael, you know, it appears the federal government is now dedicated to the idea of wiping black folks from history. What do you think the impact of that's going to be?
Absolutely. This is Project 2025. They're trying to wipe our black behinds off of the political chessboard. This is what we were telling these simple Simon-ass Negroes what was going to happen. Juneteenth gives us an opportunity to force into the national conversation a history that Republicans are trying to erase that history from the landscape of America. When we have our Juneteenth celebrations, we have to incorporate history, economics, law, and politics into them. And Juneteenth took on a new purpose after the death of George Floyd, May 25th, 2020. This is why we're seeing this. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing this backlash also.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's kind of like what Barry Goldwater said after the civil rights movement. This is the white lash. This is the white lash after George Floyd. And Matt, kind of on that point, what do we need to do going forward since we see this attack coming?
We need to tell them to say it with their chest and be ready for the smoke, because all the euphemisms are not hiding what we know it is. It's racism. It's hate. It's hate for us. That's why you don't want to teach the Tuskegee Airmen to new Air Force cadets. It's about racism, and we need to call it what it is. Just like that sister got up and walked out, we need to make it uncomfortable for people and call them out.
All right. Thank you so much to our panel today. Thanks so much to all of our guests that we had on. Thank you so much to the production crew that is in the back making all this work and telling me to go from camera 2 to camera 3 so I don't look crazy. Got to thank Roland for letting me keep his seat warm. I got to thank you, the listeners and the viewers of Roland Martin Unfiltered. Make sure you like the videos, you subscribe. We want to make sure that when Roland gets back, he sees there are thousands and thousands of likes on here. And as I say at the end of every show, in the words of Gil Scott Heron, no matter the consequences or fears to grip your senses, you've got to hold on to your dreams. Hold on to your dreams, America. Thank you. That was fun. The teleprompter remote does not work.